I'm just going to get straight into it, simply because the big story of the week has got to be Israel and Iran. I'm going to stick my cards on the table straight away. Look, first of all, Iranian Special Forces, or Hamas as they're otherwise known, attacked Israel on the 7th of October. I'm not so worried about that this week, and I'll tell you why. Because frankly, Israel has dealt with Hamas, at least to a greater or lesser extent. Obviously, there is still the issue with us funding Hamas and funding Iran through overseas aid. I'm going to say one thing, and you can agree with me or disagree with me, but I think this overseas aid thing, what has happened in Gaza has proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that overseas aid is almost always a force for bad. Now, I'm not going to say that it's bad when, say, there's a flood or an earthquake or something like that. What happens when you've got these countries on overseas aid for long periods of time? It emboldens, it empowers corrupt and bad governments, which keeps people poor. But anyway, let's park all that for a minute, because we can talk about Israel, we can talk about Gaza, we can talk about Hamas all day. Iran, specifically, I think that President Trump was right to join the Israelis in bombing the nuclear sites, simply because Iran has been a rogue nation, a rogue state for a very long time. I've got a number of friends of mine who are Iranian, and also people who visited Iran as well. And what's really interesting about it, everyone who's ever been always says to me, now, by the way, quick caveat, this is anecdotal evidence. That is to say, I've only spoken to about 10 people, but the people that I have spoken to have always said to me, Iran is a perfectly lovely place, full of very, very lovely people, and the problem is its government is just a bunch of extremist lunatics. Now, what has happened historically is that Iran has basically ignored its own government. But what's happened more recently is, because of COVID, because of the sanctions, because of this failed nuclear program, and I say failed because it's rendered Iran a pariah, the people in Iran are getting poorer and poorer and poorer, and they are desperate to be rid of this nutter government. Ali Khamenei, the Ayatollah, no, the idiot Ali Khamenei has destroyed a rich and successful and vibrant country. Civic society destroyed, economics destroyed, women who had rights before all rolled back, and what we have now seen is the British left not merely defending Ali Khamenei's right to subjugate women, to execute homosexuals, to run a racist and corrupt regime, but they're also arguing very, very strongly that he should be allowed to continue to have his nuclear weapons. What happened to CND? What happened to burn the bra? What happened to this idea of everybody being equal? Now, I know that the British left hate anything Western, but surely, in your twisted loathing of market capitalism, in your twisted loathing of democracy, in your twisted loathing of free speech and family values and Christianity, surely Ali Khamenei can't be the poster boy for what you want as an alternative. They're forcing women to walk around with what amounts to sacks over their heads in order to satisfy Islamic rules that simply do not exist. A burqa is to Islam what a raincoat is to Christianity. That is to say that in many Christian countries people wear raincoats, and in some Christian countries people wear burqas and hijabs and all this sort of thing, but there is nothing in the Quran that says that you have to wear
1,000 people a year, you know, a lot of gay young men in the town on a crane. When they first took power, they cleared the minefields, they used child soldiers, but when they were too small to carry weapons and that, they just ran them across the minefields to blow, and they gave them a little key, so this is your key to heaven, and tens of thousands of kids between the ages of 10 and 12 were ran across minefields to...
So here we go.
This is who you're dealing with.
So all I can say now is I genuinely do not understand why the British left were out defending Iran, supporting Ali Khamenei's right to abuse women, execute homosexuals and run his country into the ground. But we're joined now by Kenneth O'Keefe, a former US Marine and Gulf War veteran, who presumably can offer an explanation for this. So look, Kenneth, first of all, I think we all agree now that we were lied to over Iraq and Afghanistan, so I get the whole idea of not invading. But what I don't understand...
Well, it's not a lie in this case,
is why we shouldn't stop the Iranians getting nuclear weapons, and moreover, why we shouldn't form some sort of solidarity with the oppressed Iranians who want rid of their crazed government.
So, having been to Iran several times, and having been to Palestine, and actually being a U.S. Marine who fought in war as a machine gunner in combat, I can tell you first off, those of us that have been to war, unlike those who have not been to war, perhaps present company included, they seem to be a lot more aggressive about war. But I can tell you 22 American service members a day who committed suicide because they went off to fight an illegal, immoral, war criminal war that was a war of aggression based on a false pretext from a lying media. They don't feel good about that.
What about the 350 Marines blown up by Iran?
They kill themselves.
What about the 350 US Marines?
Hang on, Kenneth.
You're a talker.
No, hang on a second.
Your own brothers in arms were murdered by Iran. 350 US Marines blown up, murdered.
Hang on, I'm confused.
Did you fact check that like you did the 40 beheaded babies?
Right.
Right, the 40 beheaded babies.
Hang on a second.
Did you
Stop.
fact check that? Remember that last time there?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that last
I'm
time?
confused.
Change the record.
All right, I'm confused. Because what I said was we were lied to about Iraq and Afghanistan, something that you repeated after I said it. I mean, it's not as if I said it was particularly groundbreaking, but nonetheless, we appear to agree on that. I don't understand where this link is between first of all, supporting the Iranian people rising up, secondly, denigrating through bombing the nuclear capability of Iran. That's not the same as a war and indeed an invasion like Iraq and Afghanistan. So if you're listing the reasons why we shouldn't repeat Iraq and Afghanistan, don't I just say to you, we're not repeating it?
So once again, if you have your way and your little cohort there who would never fight in a war because he's a coward, nonetheless.
Hang on,
if the chicken hawk have their way,
look,
they will send others.
No, hang on a second. Let's not throw out insults, right? Yeah. So first of all, cohort is a group of people. He's a co-host, not a cohort. So first, you ought to learn.
I think the war's affected you a bit. You know what I mean? It's affected you.
But secondly, look. I've not been rude to you. There is no need to be rude to me, and there's no need to be rude to Asher. Do you want, and now look, do you want to have a conversation in which you explain to me, why we shouldn't be denigrating Iran's nuclear capability?
We can't hear you, your mic's down.
Or do you just want to hurl insults at people? There we go, I'll let him answer.
Based on the same false intelligence that Netanyahu gives your talking points to. Yeah. The fact is, the United States has been committing more terrorism than any other nation on the planet, and it's doing so at the behest of the Greater Israel Project, given to them by those who control Jeffrey Epstein and have tapes about these traitors raping children, and the world knows it. Cat Williams.
Irrational blabber.
No, hang on a second.
This is gibberish.
Pull it down again. I'm genuinely just asking you why we shouldn't denigrate Iran's nuclear program. We're on Jeffrey Epstein. We're on US Marines committing suicide. We've decided that he's a cohort, he's a coward. I'm just asking you why we shouldn't denigrate Iran's nuclear capability.
The West are the problem. And the fact is, we made the same sad excuses for Iraq.
It's not right, really. I mean,
22 American service members a day committing suicide, and you two chicken hawks would say...
No, hang on a second. Stop him again. I don't understand this interview. I don't understand this guy. I brought him on to ask him a genuine question. I don't think I've been remotely rude. By the way, for the listeners, we've had to mute him.
He's still shouting, though, so he won't even be able to hear this. It's like Yosemite Sam, you know, the cartoon character, and he's just spouting gibberish.
He's really kicking off here, right? Okay. Let's give him one more chance. Let's just give him one more chance. Right. Listen. Kenneth, I promise you, I'm not having a go at you. You've called me a coward, a chicken hawk, and all that sort of thing. Right, fine. I'll accept that. Why shouldn't we denigrate Iran's nuclear...
Shut up. Tell that other one to shut up and let me answer the question.
Well, because you're just shouting. You're just shouting gibberish.
Do so respectfully.
You're just blabbering, aren't you? Just answer the question.
Okay. Why shouldn't we denigrate fourth time?
Wow,
why shouldn't we
try and be succinct with your points?
If I ever meet you in person, I will slap you like the little boy that you are, the child that you are.
I'll tell you what I think you should do. I'll tell you what I think you should do.
Were you really a Marine? Because you don't seem like a Marine.
Stop a second. By the way, let's just remind our viewers and listeners of something. this obnoxious moron that we brought on the show with his ridiculous hat and his even more ridiculous abusive beliefs. It's interesting, isn't it? You go straight for the Jew. Explain what the problem is specifically with Asher. Go for it, big boy. Go for it. Mr. Marine, I'll come round your house and give you a slap. I'll put your backside that hard you'll have to brush your teeth with it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, you guys, dumb and dumb. I thought you guys had it with James.
I asked
but now
you a
James
question. Are you going to answer the question? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll tell you what we'll do. What question do you want to answer? Because I failed as an interviewer to even get the first question answered.
He's deranged.
Right. Okay, so we failed on question 1. Why not denigrate Iran's nuclear program? We've struggled with that one. Let's go for the next one. He'll love this one. Right. Okay. Relatives of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza have today appealed to President Trump to replicate his decisive action in Iran to bring home hostages and make the Middle East great again. I can't wait for this. Should Donald Trump intervene to get hostages released by Hamas?
Well, he might want to look into the Hannibal Directive, where Israel killed most all of the people on that day, fateful day that's been called the Day of 40 Beheaded Babies. Have you heard of the Hannibal Directive? That would be important.
Let me tell you, Kenneth, there are so many of your things I've never heard of. But
you've never heard of the Hannibal Directive?
Any thoughts on the question?
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump might want to consider the official policy of the Hannibal Directive by the
Why don't you answer the question about the hostages that
in which they would rather have dead Israelis than have hostages.
But then why are they fighting so hard to get the hostages back?
Thousands of hostages in Palestine.
Yeah.
Thousands,
why are they trying so hard to get the hostages back if they don't care?
Did you hear about the memo?
You can't hear your own irrational arguments.
For the right to rape.
Your mind's all fogged and you can't understand what you're saying. It's just like coming out like sewage.
I'm going to be pull him down for a second. I'm going to be genuinely honest here. And I don't say this in order to insult you, but I really do think that you need some support, because it's very, very clear to me that whatever's happened to you as a Marine, and by the way, I think you ought to be congratulated for your service. I mean, I'm finding it incredibly difficult to conduct a conversation with you. You're really struggling. You're flying off the handle. You're getting angry for absolutely no reason. All I wanted to ask you was some simple questions. You think that I've been rude to you? I haven't. All I'm just asking is this one. Do you believe that President Trump should intervene and attempt to get the hostages freed? I mean, it's not that difficult to... In fact, say anything you want. I'll just let you get on with it.
Donald Trump took $100 million from Miriam Adelson, and before that, Sheldon gave him $100 million. He should be tried for treason and hung according to the law.
But what about the hostages? What about the hostage? Any thoughts on the hostages?
There's thousands of Palestinian hostages without due process.
So would it make sense, Kenneth?
So they should keep the Israeli ones.
No, hang on a second. Is it possible?
The Palestinians count for nothing, and one Israeli life is more precious than all of the Goyim combined.
Okay.
This is the world we live in, isn't it?
Okay. Do you think?
Not really. No, you live in an.
By the way, war propaganda is a war crime, by the way. Did you know that? According to Nuremberg,
you live in a different world, man. I don't know what world.
War crime. By that logic, you two are guilty.
Are we war criminals now? Should we be in front of the Hague?
All the evidence.
Well, let's go and give ourselves into the Hague.
I've asked you 2 bloody questions.
Maybe you should run us into cell like John Wayne.
Stop.
Howdy, partner.
I've asked this bloke on. I've asked him 2 bloody questions, and now I'm a coward, war criminal, chicken hawk, and he's going to beat me up, right? In what way are we not broadcasting someone who's having mental health problems? Cut him off. I don't want it anymore. This guy's got a problem. This guy's got an issue. I genuinely think that somebody as delusional as that should not be on this channel again. No. I'm completely confused by
He's a danger to himself, if anything.
We had. What was he on about?
He was like this last time. I mean, there's no reason with him. Let's just go to the phone lines and make sense of everything.
I'm disappointed by that.
Well, I would expect that's what he's like. That's what the bloke's like. That's his shtick.
I was told we had an expert coming on who was an ex-US Marine who knew what he was on about. We're just going on about all sorts.
I mean, like I said, Iran set a bomb that killed, I think, 350 US Marines or 150.
Is he normally like that?
Yeah, no, that's his normal, that's his shtick.